Aloha, and what's going on? Today I'm going to be checking out Backloggd.com, and this is a archiving, cataloging site where you can put in games that you, have in your backlog, in your collection. You can rate games, talk about games. It's a pretty cool site from what I've experienced so far. There's other ones that are competing with it, but this one is the best that I've seen so far. I signed up for another one a while back. I forget what the name was. These sites have been around for quite a while. There's various applications that do similar things, but this is the best I've seen. And I signed up for it, and now I'm going through the whole process again, but I hadn't gone too deep into the process on previous sites, so it's not too much of a loss. And the fact that I find that fun, and this site is, in fact, you can read this if you want. The fact that this site is, so well done in comparison to the competition means that, for me at least, because it's fun, I feel like it's worth going through and re-archiving stuff. So let's hang out. Let's talk about games. Zez says it's obviously better in terms of graphics. He means Max Payne 2, controls, physics, and all, but I think it lacks a bit of the charm the first game had, although the essence is still there. I definitely agree, I said. The first was a labor of love that had so many odds stacked up against its development, from Remedy being new to the style of the game at the time, the engine being built from the ground up, in-house, I'll talk about that in a minute, I guess, financial troubles, and so much more. Not that the second game doesn't also exhume oodles of care or talent, I just theorized that the restraints imposed upon the previous title could very well be the major contributing factor to its je ne sais quoi. The in-house engine that Max Payne 1 used was very advanced at the time, and still I think is quite impressive considering the limitations they had, the technology at the time and so on, and the reason they were able to develop it so efficiently and do that. That's I don't know if it's unheard of, but it's definitely something I don't hear about very often in the games industry, especially back then. How were they able to do that? Well, that's actually because Remedy was made up, the company that made Max Payne, developed Max Payne, I should say, not published, but they were made up of a lot of ex-executives at a graphics processing firm, graphics rendering company of sorts. And using those expertise, they were able to, do what we're talking about. They were able to engineer a very advanced engine for the time that is quite impressive for sure. I can show you my account in a minute and what I've done so far. Well, let's do that at the end. But let's go over here to that guy's account, Zez's account, because one thing, I just want to check it out, and also because favorite games. I just want to comment on stuff and log more stuff. So The Punisher, that's a great game. Max Payne, obviously, I love. Let's add that to played, and then you can add things to played. You can add things to your backlog just right there. But if you want to do things in more detail, there's some here, and if you hit journal, you can pretty much access, from what I know, all of the things you can do involving this site and games for your personal logging. So here we have log and playthroughs. Up here we've played it. I've beaten it before, so completed. It's automatically set to completed. 100% completed. I don't think I've unlocked everything yet. So I beat the main objective though, so it's completed. Rating, that's always difficult for these games. Let's not do that yet. Xbox, it didn't come out on Xbox 360, I'm pretty sure, unless it came out on the digital marketplace, but it is backwards compatible, so that's why it's there. A lot of backwards compatible games, Xbox games that you can play on Xbox 360 were re-released, or are on, I should say, currently, at least in this point within space-time, are on the marketplace for you to buy without needing to go and hunt down the disc, and that has to do with licensing agreements and everything else, and that was kind of the deal from what I know, involving they needed to go back and license games to get them emulated on the Xbox 360 because they have to be emulated, and due to copyright law they had to do that. Something like that. Let's not ramble on for too long, although that's exactly what I do, and especially because of the mood I'm in today, that's just how I am. 3.5 to 4 stars. We're going to hit 4 stars for now, but we can go back to it. I own it physically, don't own it digitally. Save log. Let's go back and check that one more time and make sure we did that correctly, which I've been doing because I'm not so used to doing this as of yet. I'm not so used to logging this kind of stuff. You can write a review, and then you can change even your review. It's crazy. There's so many options. You can even change your review to show which version you're reviewing. The mobile version I definitely want to pick up at one point. Same thing with as many versions as I can. I own it on... Well, I have an emulated version on PC that I barely touched. Should I add it to that? Actually, I won't. Own it physically. Yep, okay. Seems good. Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Not one. I haven't dove into the Prince of Persia series yet. I plan on doing that eventually. I think I've played the first one through an emulator, which I don't do very often. It might have even been in a collection, actually. I'm not sure. Skyrim I've certainly played. I'm not as big of a fan of it as some, but still a good game for sure. Well designed, you know. You got to look past your your biases and all aspects, even through art. And looking past those biases, I can't deny the quality of the game. Definitely haven't beaten it. Finished with a game that lacks an end. No. Unfinished, may pick up later. Yep. Okay, shelved. I own it on 360. I don't own it on PC. I don't own it on PC. Rating is, definitely the rating there is going to piss some people off. That's definitely, my subjective rating. I'm doing this for myself and not for other people. Other people can check and see what my opinions are on things, but I'm basing it off of my personal opinion. Objectively, it's a well-designed game. If anything, if objective reality, if there's any aspect of objection to reality, then you gotta say Skyrim is well designed. It's written in the stars. It's prophesized. It has to be true. But just for me personally, it just doesn't align fully with the kinds of games I enjoy. Just not as much for me as others, but I still got some enjoyment from it. So above average in terms of my enjoyment. Average would be 2.5 stars, so a little bit above that. I'm giving it 3 stars. More options. Own it physically. They could add, it's kind of interesting, I wonder if there's DLC we can check on this site, but it seems like it's just games so far, because there's no tab or anything I've seen so far. Destroy log, oh no. There's nothing I've seen so far involving being able to show if you have DLC or not. This is still recording. I just want to check that here and there. Yep. Anyways, there you go. Max Payne, Punisher. Okay, cool. Let's go over here to all of his games. He has 87 games logged. So Terraria, have not played. It shows his rating up above there. I'm pretty sure that's what that is. Similar to Letterboxd. Terraria, don't own. Don't have a ton of care, since I wasn't a big fan of Minecraft, which I don't think we logged, actually. We'll have to see. Since I'm not a fan of Minecraft, I never got around to playing Terraria. Those aren't exactly my kinds of games, but it's available so cheap on so many platforms. I feel like I'll probably pick it up at one point. Who knows? I might even like it better, and I know there's a lot of differences to it in minutia that add up to a kind of a different experience once you get into it. But from the onset, I was going to say offset. I think from the onset, if I'm saying that correctly, it doesn't seem to be something that would appeal to me. But we'll see. Eventually, when I get around to playing it. Speaking of, I guess I could. Yeah, since I'm going to play it eventually, I might as well add it to a wish list. There you go. Perfect. A lot of platforms. Geez, holy crap, man. These popular indie games, geez, they're just on everything. Vice City, I definitely own, for sure. Quite a good game, although I think it has some flaws, especially when compared to modern titles. I don't believe in... it's... How do I put that? well-designed or complexly designed can be objective, but I think quality is, definitely subjective. It's kind of complicated. What I was saying about Skyrim, I guess I'd say was me saying that it's objectively quality. I'm only basing off of my linear perspective and basing it off of the complexities of the game and the richness of its mechanics and so on. And Vice City certainly has a lot of that, but it has a few flaws that or things that can be seen, I think, through a modern lens as dated. I don't believe games really are dated. I don't like that term. Just because it seems to kind of have a, I don't know, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Games don't age per se. A game from, I read a comment on here before recording this that, well, of course the game sucks, it's from the 70s, and that kind of stuff just kind of pisses me off. Art is a living embodiment of all of our shared humanity, and I don't necessarily feel that it's fair to talk about a game and say it's bad because of the time that it came out in. Obviously, something can't be bad just because of when it came out in. Time is relative to the observer, so I don't. I just think it's too linear. It's too introspective. Yeah, too introspective, I guess, to say that. If time's relative and plenty of games from the 70s obviously have the complexities and the richness of richness of development and everything else, and the originality that I would say you could try and argue is the objective side, if there is one, to art. Obviously, subjectively, you can dislike it, but subjectively, your subjective opinion on the game's quality doesn't at all have anything to do with the time in which it came out. I mean, there you go. Hopefully that makes some sense. I don't know, man. I could see I'll give it 4 stars. Very good game. Some certain things I don't like about it, such as, I think certain areas can be seen as rough, like the controls, and the game can be frustrating at times. There's a lot of backtracking and, such as, just like, a lot of open world games, but Vice City in particular, I mean, especially when compared to something like Grand Theft Auto 5, involves a lot of backtracking, and the game's difficulty is good, but its difficulty, when the game's difficulty is, how do I put that? When the game's difficulty is on point, it's good, but certain aspects of the game's difficulty seem to come from unfair aspects, or come from elements that weren't refined enough, like the controls and like the saving system and such. I just don't, in my view, I just can't see needing to restart a level that took you 40 minutes or whatever. I can't see replaying all of that and backtracking and going through the entire thing all over again. Very fun. The level may be fun, but having the controls seize up on you and needing to restart that much of the game just doesn't seem very fair, or at least fun from my view. So that's definitely a big flaw, and kind of adding to that, again, some of the controls, definitely I'm not a big fan of at times. I feel like they can be a bit clunky, take a lot of time to get used to, and even after playing the game for 70, I think it was, hours, I logged on the PC, and not to mention how many hours I played it on the Xbox original, I still think the controls sometimes just don't align. I don't know if I just can't get a handle on them or what, but from what I've heard others, especially from people that are used to more intuitive, I'd argue, controls of a lot of modern games, a lot of people from my generation certainly seem to agree on that the controls that the controls can be very difficult to get used to, and don't seem to embody intuitiveness all too well. PC, Xbox. Geez, I forgot it was on iOS and Android. Crazy, man, crazy. And Mac, physical, digital, got it digitally on PC. Okay, looks good. Doom, I already logged there. 3 stars, man. I wonder if he reviewed it. I should check out his reviews later, but yeah, I played Doom, certainly. I logged it here. 5 stars. I got it on 360, Xbox One, PC. Great, great game. One of my absolute favorites. And when you see my profile later on, you'll see that it's labeled up at the top of my profile as my top games. I only have 3 in there so far. We'll see what ends up there later on. I think you can have up to like 5, something like that, games in your top games on your profile, and Doom's one of them. Max Payne's the other, and Twisted Metal 2's the other. I guess I gave it away, but we'll hop on my profile later on because I'll show you or we'll see at the end of this, whatever this is. We'll see all the stuff we've logged. Command and Conquer. Not a big fan of RTSs. I haven't played enough, I should say, of the genre. And there's certainly some that I think are decent, games like StarCraft, which we should log, but well, it's all in time, all in good time. But yeah, not too interested. Heard of this? This needs to be on my wish list. I remember Mia Chums, I think it's what it was. For any of you that come from my Discord, you'll probably know who Mia Chums is, a streamer you should check out, not because he streams very often or at all from what I know anymore, but because he has some good streams out there. He's a cool dude for sure. MEACHUMZ, I believe. And yeah, he played this and it looks great. Wish list. Create log. Okay. The Arkham games, I played one of them at a friend's house, but don't own any of them. I want to get around to it someday, but, I think I don't own any of them. One of them I might own through a subscription or something, but that's not really owning games, is it? People are going to maybe argue that, but I'm not going to get into it. Enter the Gungeon. Yeah, I haven't played it. Heard about it a lot. Definitely people are a fan of it. I believe it's a roguelike, right? Really haven't dove into roguelikes. That's one, maybe eventually, someday I'll get into. Inside, I have through a subscription, so I'll log it here. I know I have it through a subscription, unlike the Batman Arkham games where I don't know if I do or not. Played, and I have played it. We own it through a subscription. It's digital, but it goes away when your Xbox Live subscription ends, from what I know. So, oh no, I wanted to. We're all over the place, aren't we? I am, at least. 3 stars for now. We'll talk about that in a second. No, I don't own it. I own it on Xbox. Xbox One. 3 stars. Played. Okay, 3 stars. Why am I giving it 3 stars? I played Limbo as well, which is by Playdead. I think is the name of the developers, and they developed Inside, from what I know. I enjoyed it, but I don't know if certain aspects of it are better than Inside. Certain aspects aren't. I like the graphical style and kind of the story that the story you play through the gameplay in Inside. It aligns more with what I look for in a narrative, in a game's narrative. But, I even think I prefer the art design slightly in Inside better. But I think the gameplay, the core moment-to-moment action of the game, for me, it just didn't click with me as much. Inside seems to be slightly more focused, or at least somewhat more focused on puzzle solving than Limbo. At least I haven't beaten either, but I got a good halfway or more through both. And from what I remember, Limbo seems to have better platforming or more focus on platforming. Inside, again, I haven't played them in a while. I only played them, I played a little over halfway through, probably through both of them. But from what I remember, Limbo definitely aligned with me more due to its platforming slant. Inside had multiple puzzles that really got me stumped and kind of really slowed the pace down for me. But Call of Duty 3. I haven't played a lot of Call of Duty games, but I have played Call of Duty 3. I'm almost positive. They blend together. But played 3 stars. I'll talk about that in a minute. A lot of games are going to be 2.5 or 3 stars. 2.5 is average. So, what do I... maybe I'll give it average, actually. Yeah, I'll give it average. I'll explain that in a minute. Xbox. That's all I own it on. Completed. Yes, I have completed it. Oh, I don't think I marked whether I completed Inside or not, but I haven't completed the game. 2.5 stars. Xbox. Okay. Let's go down here and do physical. Cool. Inside, we don't own. Oh, we don't own. We haven't completed. Shelved, unfinished. May I pick it back up? Yeah, I'll probably pick it back up later. And with that being said, I should probably get a digital copy of it when I get the chance. It's never had a physical copy from what I know, but it has had a digital. It's digitally available, of course. I can add it to a list. I have a list going on. I'll show you later. Actually, we'll open that in a new tab. There you go. You'll see my profile real quick, and then I'll show you the list system that I have going on. I only have one so far, but it's relevant to what we're doing. 17 played games logged so far. You get your average ratings here. Pretty cool. You got stuff like you can put little links to different profiles you have. This is my Letterboxd account. Go check it out if you wish. And see, it's very similar here where you got your favorites at the top. Favorites right there. Not really at the top, but there's things below it, I guess. Then you got recent activity right below that. You got recent activity below this stat. This is your overall stats, which on Letterboxd are up here. So a little different, but not too different. Very, very similar site, and both are very rich in features, and that's why, Letterboxd I've been using for so long to archive movies and stuff, long enough that I have, 640 films archived, logged. So we'll see if I get that far with Backloggd.com, but certainly not today. These are my favorites that I have listed here so far. And then here you have a bunch of things you can look at, but in lists, which I'll show you right now, we have digital games I still need to own. These are digital games I still need to own. Earth Defense Force, Insect Armageddon. It wasn't bad at all, but it was just kind of mindless. I got this through the Xbox Games with Gold, so I believe it will disappear when I lose my subscription, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, I could pick up a cheap copy. I want to dive more into the game. It's fun to collect games, so I feel like I'll probably pick up a copy, especially because I want to pick up the other Earth Defense Force games anyways and give them a shot, at least 1 or 2 more that are the higher rated titles. I'm a game collector. This is just how it goes, even though I rated it at 2.5. It's average. Average isn't bad. Average just means, it's not exactly my thing. It's arcadey for sure, kind of interesting. I'll scroll while I'm talking about it, but yeah, it just seems kind of mindless. I played it with Rapid Fire. Yeah, compared to the other EDF games, and that's interesting. Maybe it's not just me. Maybe other people that are fans of the series also don't like it. I don't know. Interesting. I played it with Rapid Fire, which hopefully will watch this. I don't know. Maybe he'll watch it, but holy crap, I don't know if he'll make it this far. Comment below if you have, Mr. Rapid Fire. Good friend of mine, we were playing it. Only played it a few times, and they were all with him, I think, which certainly made the game better, but I got to judge the game by the game standard, not by, how much fun you have playing it with your friends. Nintendo Land, definitely more fun. Can be a lot of fun playing with your friends, but did I really rate it 3 stars? I don't know. It might be 3.5 stars. It's fun, but I don't return to it very often. Part of that's probably because I don't have friends. So, I don't know. It's interesting. Which kind of makes me wonder if you can judge a game by its fun that you get from friends. I suppose fun is really what games are all about. So, maybe you can judge a game by the amount of fun you have with friends, but the fact that I don't play games with friends that often, because I don't have any physically, in person and stuff, means that, I'm mostly judging it from my single-player perspective. And Super Mario 3D World, although you can play that with, multiple people, I've played it a heck ton in single-player to the point that I've beaten it and spent a long time with it. Great game. 4 stars. And Nintendo Land and Super Mario 3D World I own digitally, but not physically, in fact, because they came with my Wii U. I got that bundle. Bless me, if you remember that bundle back in the day. Some much-needed silence for you. This is all I've logged so far. I haven't gone through and added information on all of these yet. Let's check here. Journal. Yeah. Journal. Yeah. Oh, well, I remember doing those. I remember doing this with you guys. This one I don't remember doing with you guys. Yeah, there's no rating at the top. I enjoy Minecraft when I played it, but I don't have an urge to come back to it. I mean, it's one of those evergreen titles. I mean, it has to be... It's Minecraft. It's so complex. It's very well designed, and because of that, it's just this endlessly replayable game that has almost limitless possibility. And I really do truly believe that's why it's probably one of the best designed games. One of the best objectively, if there is such a thing, one of the best objectively best games out there. Choking over my words here. And, I would think that's why it's so popular, why it's sold so well, why it's one of the best-selling games of all time. But nonetheless, it just doesn't click with me as much. I don't know. I had fun playing at the time, especially with friends, but it's just not one I really want to go back to very often. I probably will at some point, so I won't over here. I won't say I own it physically. I won't say I won't say retired, but I'll say shelved. And with that being said, I don't want to give it a 2.5. It's better than average because I don't know, man, it's tough because I don't want to go back to it very often. Average Call of Duty there, definitely don't really want to go back to. I mean, I probably will. I own it, but I don't know, man. What is... Let's look here. Staying that away. And staying that away? It's a staying abandoned. Oh, man. I don't know, man. It's tough. I'm going to give it a 3 stars. It's it's one of those. It's kind of like Eraserhead. I have some movies like that on Letterboxd where I'm kind of confused what to rate it. Eraserhead's a good example of that. I rewatched that just recently. And it's a good movie, for sure. It's extremely unique, beautiful, everything else. But how often do I want to return to it? How much enjoyment do I get from it? It can be a slow movie. It can be a boring movie. It has flaws. But it's also just so original, so unique, and unlike anything I've ever seen before. And I'd have to imagine unlike anything that will ever come out again. It's crazy. And it has charm to it. It really does. But it's similar in the camp with Minecraft, where I respect it far more than I enjoy it. Similar to Skyrim. The Punisher, we did that. Half-Life Opposing Force, a lot of fun. It's the Half-Life game I actually enjoy the most, and that's just because of the multiplayer. I think Half-Life 2, I actually enjoyed the single-player, the base Half-Life 2 game, not the episodes, but base Half-Life 2, I actually think I enjoyed the single player the most, but because I enjoyed the Opposing Forces multiplayer even more, far more, Half-Life Opposing Force is my favorite Half-Life game. It's one of my favorite multiplayer games, in fact, and although multiplayer games I normally have to take, when I rate multiplayer games or think about the quality of a multiplayer game, I commonly have to step back and say, hey, the multiplayer isn't going to be around forever. I think it'd be more fair to judge the game in accordance with and in regards to the grand pantheon of the medium. And doing so, I think I think judging the game by its multiplayer, if the multiplayer isn't going to be around forever, which almost all multiplayer games that's the case, I just don't think it's necessarily the best idea. You can, certainly. It's your rating, right? But comparing it to, especially because a lot of these games, especially on consoles and stuff, I mean, in a few years, the servers are gone. So maybe that won't be that way in the grand future when everything's streaming or whatever. I don't know. All things must come to an end. But for most multiplayer games, you'll see or most online multiplayer games, I should say, I'm gonna have to take the rating with a grain of salt. I'm going to have to judge it a little differently, a little harsher, just because that content isn't always going to be around and may even not be around by the time you're watching this, depending on what game I'm talking about, etc. So, but Half-Life Opposing Force is a Valve game, and Valve is one of the only companies that gives me confidence that the multiplayer is going to be around for far longer than I or anybody listening to my ratings will ever, anybody seeing my ratings will ever possibly see. Anybody seeing my ratings is going to be probably dead by the time Valve's games shut down in terms of multiplayer. I believe that, truly. Their oldest multiplayer game is, 20-something years old, and they're able to keep these games up and don't seem to at all care about their games being up for multiple reasons. One is from what I theorize, one is because they're a freaking huge company with mountains and mountains of money. They seem to be way more friendly in terms of consumer friendly, although no company's your friend. Valve certainly seems more friendly than something like EA. And because of that, they just don't seem to have a care in nickel and diming their library in that regard. They're not like EA. They're not just going to shut down a game a few years after it came out, which, EA, was it Battleborn? I forget what it was. That's an example. If Battleborn did in fact come out, if Battleborn did in fact come out by EA, it was 2K. Whatever, you get what I'm saying. I think I remember. I think I recall EA shutting down other games relatively fast, different multiplayer games, and their iOS and their mobile games, which mobile I can sort of understand because, as hardware changes and evolves for those operating systems, you can't carry the games on forever, I suppose, but you kind of can. Emulation is getting more and more efficient, and similar to Windows and computer operating systems, it's not like architecture is becoming more and more streamlined across all digital platforms, and especially when it's one platform and it's one like PCs or one like phone operating systems that are very open source. I just can't. I just can't justify it. I get it's harder to carry on these games. I get there's work that's involved, but a lot of these things, especially with like PC games and stuff, from what I understand, it's like a few months to update these games if these companies put in the appropriate work. It's not a lot of work, and the proof is in the pudding. The proof is in these fan communities that are keeping these games alive. And beyond Valve keeping their games alive, keeping their vast library continually updated and available and ready to play on modern hardware at any time, they've gone beyond that by, again, continuing to support the online, and even if they could save a small bit of money, which from what I know, it doesn't cost a lot because the amount of people playing these old games is not a whole lot. And on top of that, they're not. They don't keep. They can keep it. They're doing it even cheaper because they're doing multiplayer servers differently than a lot of the companies that shut down their multiplayer servers. A lot of these companies that shut down their multiplayer servers shut them down because the cost is. the cost is higher than what Valve does. Valve doesn't just have from what I know, they don't have a huge server farm for a lot of their old games. After a certain point, they shut down their dedicated servers, but the fact that they have fan community servers that they allow to keep up means that the small amount that they pay to have their online interface, whatever you want to call it, interface with the fan community's servers and everything, and the fact that technology, the Valve network, whatever that's called, runs through all of their old games, all their gold source games and others and such, means that it's so easy. From what I know, it's so easy to keep all of this up, as long as their games, as long as they update certain aspects of the games to work on modern hardware and such. Played. Completed? No, I definitely haven't completed. But it's an evergreen title in my mind, which, yeah, I'm always going to go back to it. But the single player, geez, I don't know if I'm ever going to beat that. More options. I own it digitally. 4 stars. PC. Okay. Looks good. I feel like I should probably wrap this up sooner or later, but I could just go as long as I want and then just cut it up. But that may also mean that requires more editing. So maybe I'll end this shortly. Let's do the other Half-Life games that we have here at least first. Half-Life Blue Shift I have not played a whole lot of. The multiplayer I remember being very similar, almost like a clone of the other Half-Life Gold Source games at the time. I have to imagine there is some exclusive content in the multiplayer, but it's very, very similar. Half-Life Opposing Force, if there is much difference, which I think there is, but it's not much. It's definitely the one that latched onto me, and I think because it all uses similar technologies, I believe I recall seeing a lot of the other Half-Life Gold Source games. I think I remember the multiplayer maps from those just being ported into each other. So, Blue server, Half-Life, Blue Shift, custom servers, from what I know, have the multiplayer maps of Half-Life and Half-Life Opposing Forces multiplayer and all that, along with, of course, custom maps and stuff. So really, it all just kind of bleeds together, but from the weapons that are in the game naturally and from the game in its base form, I think, from what I recall, Half-Life Opposing Force seems better to me, at least. But I haven't even messed with Blue Shift's multiplayer a lot anyway, so I can't say too much on it, although I have played it. The single player I played a bit more of than the multiplayer in Blue Shift, but either way, I still haven't played very much of it at all. And like all of the Half-Life games, I've shelved them because I got stuck in the single player. All of them I've shelved except Opposing Force. Opposing Force I always come back to. But with that being said, I gotta rate it off of what I know. Well, do I? Have I played enough of it to give it a rating? That's a question. Before we answer that, let's put Windows PC here. We got it digital, and I don't know, man. Let's give it a rating for now. It's fun, man. It has a lot of the same aspects, a lot of the same combat mechanics and such, and as the others. I definitely don't think its narrative was as strong as the base Half-Life game, Half-Life Gold Source, the original Half-Life. I'd actually say that's probably the game, in my opinion, that has the best single player. I'm mostly basing that off of my preference of having games have very player. I love player-driven stories. Games that have rich stories, but rich stories that are player. That through player agency, you progress the story, you craft it, and I think Half-Life is one of the best games that does that. Every step of the way, it's very cinematic, but every step of the way, the game only progresses as you progress, and I feel like it does it very naturally. The game doesn't feel linear despite it being linear. I don't think Blue Shift embodies that nearly as much, and Half-Life Opposing Force, I remember having some annoying enemies, with a lot of the other commando kind of enemies that I remember them, the commando and the hit scanning enemies, I think they're hit scanning, appearing earlier on in that game. So the single player, I'd actually say, was a bit worse from what I remember and from what I played in comparison to Blue Shift, even though I played, less of Blue Shift. So with that being said, I'm going to say the single player is a little bit better than Half-Life Opposing Force. Not as good as the original Half-Life, and definitely not as good as the other Half-Lives. Haven't played a lot of multiplayer. Maybe 3.5. That seems fair. It's above a 3, I think, especially that games like Minecraft and stuff a 3. Definitely not as original as Minecraft. Definitely not as good in the objective sense, I think, from what I was talking about. Minecraft is just such an original game with literally countless possibilities. I mean, endless possibilities almost, next to endless possibilities with, how much you can create in everything else. I mean, it's a endless sandbox compared to Half-Life Blue Shift, which is just simply an expansion for a game. The second expansion for a game that's single player is only a few hours long, and its multiplayer is, basically a carbon copy with a few different things in it when compared to the rest of the Half-Life Gold Source multiplayer games. So, but again, the score is based off of my personal feelings. So with that being said, I think a 3.5 is fair, certainly. Okay, there you go. One more. I talked about. Oh yeah, let's have you. I didn't mean to do that, but whatever. Let's have you look at this. It's cool. You're able to see more info. What is that? You got playable on, shows you all different platforms, little icons next to it even. It's very well done. You got genres, and you can, I guess, search through games by that, and then apply filters to kind of sort through it. Very cool. Very cool. What is IGDP? Oh, wow. It hooks up to a different thing. I wonder if... Wow, it hooks up to a different site that's very similar, kind of like an IMDb, I guess is what it's modeled after. Instead of IMDb, it's IGDB. Okay, interesting. So it directly links to that. Does it just link to that because, or I wonder if Backloggd is somehow associated with or uses some kind of similar technology or some kind of, some kind of back-end something or other software that interfaces and basically dumps and mirrors content from IGDB. Maybe that's how they're able to have such a rich library, because it's crazy how I was when I was messing around on this before. There's so many games, so many consoles. Everything I could think of was on here, and there's has to be something that's not on here. But from what, and I found an area somewhere. Doesn't really matter right now, but I found an area somewhere where if you have a profile, you can add things to the database, but how can you have people use the database? How can you have people fill out the site if how will they won't come if there's nothing there, right? Created and they will come. Not exactly. Maybe eventually in a million years if the servers are still up, but I mean, it takes decades. I would have to imagine it would take years, for that to happen. So how is this site so robust despite being a fan project? From what I know, it must do something like that. I was thinking about that before, and this just kind of cements my theory, I think, or very much plays into my theory and adds credence. Journal. 4 stars. Windows PC. How are you guys liking this video? I'm going to end it in a minute here, but shelved. I'll go back to it eventually, but I definitely go back to Half-Life Opposing Force and an infinitesimal degree more than the rest of the Half-Life games, because the multiplayer is just so dang good. But digitally, be cool to own physically on PS2, but that's the stats for now with that game, and this is the video for now. Thank you very much for watching. What did you think of it? Tell me if you're going to sign up for the site. If you do, definitely check my account out. And even if you don't want to sign up for the site, at least check it out. this is a lot of fun. I very much enjoy doing this video. I very much enjoy, I'm going to be doing this anyways, right? So if I'm got serious merging update, maybe that does detail what we were talking about before with the IGDB site. Anyways, but nonetheless, I very much thank you for watching. Talk about the site down below. Talk about anything, really. Thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it. And if you want more, tell me. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.